It's about a king standing in his little portico, looking down at the people. That's what King George wants for himself. They announced over the past couple of days, it was in the morning Buffalo News, that they're building 2 more hotel skyscrapers in Niagara Falls, Ontario. That was as clear a message as anyone could ever send to the population of Niagara County. Things are happening across the border. For George, what does that mean? If there was a thriving economy here, George wouldn't have the power of control like he has today. If this economy was growing, he wouldn't have that. He wouldn't be able to satisfy that ego that is so dominant with it. We're going to talk about the $58 million that in casino revenue was split to Niagara County and the city of Niagara Falls. $58 million is accumulated in an escrow account over 3 years. The Indians are tied up in a lawsuit with the state of New York that Andrew Cuomo has chosen to continue. The Indians are claiming that the state government violated their compact when they allowed racinos in 3 different locations in this area. And those racinos are pumping a lot of money into the state. And Andrew Cuomo likes that. So he is engaged in this lawsuit with the Indians. The cut of Niagara County out of that casino revenue was intended to be compensation to the city of Niagara Falls and the county of Niagara for the services that are rendered. Compensation for the real estate taxes that aren't paid. Compensation for the sales taxes that are not collected. Compensation for this special franchise, which unbelievably, Governor Pataki, in all of his crazy ignorance, allowed the Senecas to have. There's no way that the legislature intended and that the people of the state intended to give the Indians not only a franchise to conduct a casino, but also a franchise to put a stranglehold over every hospitality business in this community. These guys running the Como, I admire them for their patience. How many restaurants have gone out of business? How many people have suffered because of this malign compact that George Maziarz and that crazy woman, whatever her name was, entered into with Pataki.
Francine Delmonte.
Francine Delmonte, oh my God, another child. They did it blindly. In a way, they did it innocently, but they didn't apply any intelligence to it. They didn't do their homework. They didn't protect the people of Niagara County and Niagara Falls. They just got totally overwhelmed. And when you take 2 small minds, it's easy to overwhelm them, especially when you give them a big, big campaign contributions. They were bought. They were bought, and there was no problem from George and Francine's perspective of throwing people under the bus. And that's what they did. Now, was it innocent? Was it just stupid? Was it intentional? Who cares? Doesn't matter. We look at the overall competency of our elected officials. And George just illustrated that he didn't have that competency. And has continued for years. So here he is now. The city is being deprived, the county is being deprived of their casino revenue. And George has every opportunity. And by the way, he's number 3 in command of the New York State Republican Caucus, which controls the New York State Senate. He has ability. When he wants to call a chip, he can call a chip. But until Johnny Destino in his campaign brought up this issue, George was perfectly willing to let everybody suffer. He made a perfunctory effort, saying, oh, I tried, but I couldn't get anybody to agree. The governor wouldn't agree. The Indians did agree that the money could be released. A couple of months, the issue was raised. And Johnny Destino came out and said, this is wrong. George should be attending to these things. And what's happened just in the last few days? The rumor's been going around town for a couple of weeks, but in the last few days, yes, we did learn that Cuomo is now re-looking at the question of whether he's going to allow the release of the monies, which are sitting in an escrow account right now. George should be ashamed of himself that it takes a political election time effort. He should be ashamed of himself asking Cuomo to not announce it until a week before the primary so that he can win votes. Because George is all about power and politics. In the same respect, in the New York State Power Authority matters, the Power Authority 50 some odd years or 60 years ago was charged in its charter with allocating a certain amount of power to the economic development needs of Western New York. That power was allocated. But over the years, we lost all our heavy industry. And power that was allocated was not being used. So what they did was they took that power and they sold it on the open market. And they sold it at a profit. Those profits were put into the bank account of the New York State Power Authority. This is profits from the sale of power that belongs to Western New York for economic development purposes. And I won't go back over the long history of it, but I'll just talk about from 2011 up. Last year, the general fund of the state in the budget swept $500 million of Western New York money, out of NYPA's accounts into the general fund to be shared across the state with everybody in New York State. And this year, as I understand it, they had another $100 million that they swept out because they continue to sell power in the open market that is allocated to us but not used. Does everybody understand that? The significance of $500 million. Now, George raised a perfunctory issue. Hey, this isn't fair, it's not right. Boom, gone. It was included in a budget bill. How did George vote on the budget bill? He voted in favor of the budget bill because it was more important for George, for his own reasons, to get really, really close with Andrew Cuomo. But he sold us out. He sold out our entire community. He threw us all under the bus. That's why we're here. That's why this guy's running. That's why it's important that he win. Because that will never happen on his watch. It will never happen to our community. Again. There's a lot of work to do in the next 5 or 6 weeks. I was talking to some of our friends here about poll watching. There isn't a person in Niagara County that doesn't understand the corruption at the polls at election time. We have to deal with it. That's my dog, Duke. I didn't mean to make anybody sad. I meant to give you something so you can connect up the dots out there for the people of this area that have to understand why George's day has come. Why it's time to terminate him with extreme prejudice. Thank you.